You are. Hey! Hi, my name is Robin Bird, and I'd like to thank you all for allowing me to come here today and speak about something that I'm very passionate about, global warming. So, greenhouse gas emissions are warming up the Earth. And Greta Thunberg, a 16-year-old environmental activist from Sweden, spoke to the UN Climate Action Panel in September. You've stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words. And yet, I'm one of the lucky ones. People are suffering. People are dying. Entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are at the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of endless economic growth. How dare you? Greta Thunberg is one person putting together very real action against global warming. And the bravery she exhibited is necessary for the change needed, but it can't be just one person. Due to the actions of just a handful of countries, the US and China, we all must come together and do our part to curb global warming before the consequences become even more deadly. Greenhouse gases are warming up the Earth with deadly consequences. The Camp wildfire and Hurricane Dorian combined totaled 151 deaths and an estimated over $10 billion in damage. The National Aeronautics and Space Administration highlights on their website the effects of global warming that can already be seen. Glaciers shrinking, animal migrations changing, longer, more intense heat waves, and all of these are coming together to create these natural phenomena that are killing people. Now, I understand there's a taboo with the term global warming. You know, for the change that's needed, the comforts of life will forever be changed. But the selfishness of that statement's not lost on me, and I hope it's not lost on you. And for those of you still worried about the economies, the Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change, which boasts over 1,300 scientists from around the globe, estimates that the net impact of climate change will continually increase unless decisive action was taken. Like 10 billion isn't already enough. Greenhouse gases are warming up the Earth with deadly consequences, and only a handful of countries are contributing to the majority of these emissions in the atmosphere. The Environmental Protection Agency's 2014 report highlights that the United States was responsible for 15% of global emissions, and China doubled that at 30%. In 2015, though, the world came together and created the first legally binding accord to curb global warming, the Paris Climate Agreement, and it seemingly worked. The world's powerhouses were cutting their carbon footprint. And then in 2016, Donald Trump was elected. In June 2017, he announced his plans to pull out of the Paris Climate Agreement, and this was seemingly a world catalyst, because in 2018, for the first time since the Paris Climate Agreement was signed, the United States, China, and now India all increased their carbon emissions. And while the EU managed to cut emissions, it was at a significantly slower rate, less than 1% of the previous years. In November 2019, Donald Trump stayed true to his word. He pulled out of the Paris Climate Agreement. What will the world do now? Greenhouse gas emissions are causing the Earth to warm up with deadly consequences, and only a handful of countries are responsible for the majority of these emissions in the atmosphere. But the action plans like the Paris Climate Agreement and the technologies like turbines that burn carbon for energy exist. This is where you come in. We must all do our part to curb this global warming. We can all do things in our everyday life to cut our carbon footprint, from paper straws, yes, they are annoying, to hybrid cars. But because of the actions of a handful of countries, we must all take greater action. We must demand that our government utilizes these action plans and re-enters the Paris Climate Accords. We must demand that they implement these technologies and force the world, particularly China, to join us. In summary, greenhouse gas emissions are warming up the Earth, and the United States and China are responsible for the majority of this change, and they have a responsibility to facilitate change in the opposite direction. Global warming is real. Global warming is costly, and if ignored, global warming is deadly. Thank you.